Now, if you could bring up the next talk. Okay, so we've gone deep into this hip sensor stuff because I thought it was just important to tell you that although what I'm about to show you is super exciting, at the end of the day, it's up to us, the scientists, to start bringing some sense to this world. Because as I go to these tech conferences, it's a bit like the injectable stem cells. They promise the world, but the reality, they haven't shown they can do much of anything. But it will be up to us, the scientists in the room, the academics, to try to understand where this stuff works. That said, the stuff I want to talk about now is a little different. So these are various roles that I have at UCSF, and they'll involve, as was mentioned, technology. Now, I do have conflicts of interest with some startups and Stryker, and when I talk about robotics, obviously that's a conflict, and do that with you as you will. I will not talk about the fancy, cool stuff like this, which you can imagine how useful that would be if you could move your pelvis around before you do your PAO and really understand how that works. Or this, which is basically giving you the augmented reality where you can actually have X-ray vision like Superman and see the bones behind the skin before you even before you cut or without dissecting. This stuff has already been around for several years. What I want to talk about is more this idea of digital health and this idea that it has to be disruptive. It doesn't have to be disruptive. And this is one of the best articles on the project on the topic written in the Harvard Business Review. And their point is that digital is incremental. It's about bridging the current state to the future state by adding pieces, piecemeal, to solve problems and then have that construct eventually develop into what will eventually become a digital solution. But it's not something that happens immediately overnight. We go from analog to digital. What we're going to do now is look at problems and solutions. And specifically, problems as seen from the perspective of scheduling a patient for surgery. So it'll be something we can all relate to. So these are what I call pain points. Problems, as a rule of thumb, don't have to worry too much about them. We all have problems, but we don't put any time against them until they become a real pain point. Each of these has a pain point for us. Referral management, spatialization in the operating room or the clinics, the use of data entry into the electronic records, etc. You can read them yourself. These are true pain points, and we have solved each of them with an app or some software solution at UCSF. Some we're getting to, some we're about to, some we're many years into it. And I'll show you a few of these. Okay, referral management technology. This was invented in 1865, by the way, the fax machine, popularized in the 1980s. But today, in the United States, 90% of referrals are sent by fax. Old technology, right? And that fax is received, the patient is then contacted by somebody, leading to a phone call or a message, which then never gets returned, leading to about 35% of all referrals actually make it into the clinic for an appointment, making a ton of work for the call center, so we automated it. So this company, what they do, they read the electronic record, they take that referral, they text the patient. 97% of text messages are answered within 3 hours. They then ask the patient, do you want a text, phone call, or email going forward? And they offer them appointments. The patient then books their appointment and can cancel their appointment. They receive reminders about the appointment. They can go on wait lists for future appointments, leading to the fact that our clinic went from having about 30% empty slots to something like 6% today. It's actually better than even that graph shows. Not only that, as a result, the number of patients we've seen has gone up 16%, and that was comparing 1 month to another, and I'm pulling all the data for this past year, and some of the data is quite impressive. Okay, so now we've seen the patient, and the problem is that my clinic is too small. I don't have place to see them, and their wait times are getting to be too long because radiology can't keep up. So we hired this company. They put sensors in every room. They give everybody an RFID tag. The X-ray techs, the doctors, the patients, everybody gets a tag. And for 3 months, they simply let us do our work. Take that information, they put it through an AI algorithm that they've optimized already, and you tell it, they ask you, what do you want to optimize for? Well, I like to optimize for a very short clinic time. And so what they do, they come in, and they can decrease your wait times by 70% by reorganizing your appointment slots based on how long a specific type of appointment normally takes in your clinic and your capacity. I suspect that a really good mathematician could do it, but they can only do it once. They can keep doing it every time you make a change and keep yourself as optimized as possible. And one of the beautiful things of this is not so much maybe that it's a 10-minute decrease in wait times. It becomes a 10-minute decrease in wait times for everybody. It becomes a very consistent experience in the clinic, which makes everybody happy. It's not like on average it's 10 minutes, but the variance is high. What the software does, it makes it very reproducible. I don't know how many of you have surgical schedulers that use these paper things that were invented in Mesopotamia, I think many years ago. The script is just as illegible, and yet it is still the primary way the surgery is scheduled. And it's a real problem if you operate in multiple hospitals, and it's a real problem if you have multiple electronic records. So this company comes along, several, of one of which we've selected, because Doxpera can search for open time slots. You have to flip through. You say, okay, I need a 4-hour time slot for a PAO with Dr. Centauri. It'll find it. It'll find it. You then have a scheduling checklist. It keeps track of whether the patient has seen their primary care physician. It does all this work in the background. And one of the beautiful things is if it's a cancellation, which usually is a really difficult thing to figure out how to fill, it'll go into the system and find any patient that's available for that surgeon whose surgical scheduling has already been done and is ready to go to surgery. It saves a ton of time for my staff, and they can do other things. Now we have seen them in the clinic, we've scheduled an appointment, we have given them surgery time, and we've filled the OR and we don't have any more OR time. Enter this software company. They look at the electronic record's entire history for the last 8 months. That's what they say they need. And they will tell you exactly how to reallocate resources to maximize utilization. And in most of the hospitals they go into, they get somewhere in the 10x range of return on investment because it increased capacity. Okay, a word on robots. And why does it fit into this talk? So most of the time when I hear people talk about robots, I'm not sure we understand what they really can do. The promise of the robot isn't that they're better, it's just simply more consistent. They will do the same procedure a really good surgeon will do. It just doesn't have the outliers. And outliers are where the costs come in. And so the value proposition of a robot is to minimizing variation from your goal. And when you can minimize variation from the goal, the surgeon may not be the first to drive it, but who of you would choose willingly surgeon C, whose median outcome is the same as surgeon A, when you could go to surgeon A? Because it is much more likely you'll get the intended outcome with surgeon A than you will with surgeon C. And that is a process, that is a promise of robotic surgery. It's not that it's a better procedure, because the target is the same. All right, you've booked them, you scheduled them, now they are home, and they have tons of questions. This is a patient engagement platform, one of several very commonly used in the United States. What it does from about a month before surgery to the first 3 months after surgery, it sends a bunch of messages to the patient. Hey, Bob, have you figured out who's going to pick you up from the hospital? Have you done your antibiotic sterile wash the night before? You're 3 weeks out from surgery. Are you having any pain, etc.? And it creates a feedback loop with the clinic that has been extremely helpful. And I published a paper presented at AUKUS where we showed a decrease in readmission rate after deployment of this technology from 4.5% to 1%. And we did nothing else in that particular year that looked at it. So we feel pretty confident there was this communication that prevented people from coming in unnecessarily. But it generated a problem. Another paper presented at AUKUS the following year is that all these questions coming back to my staff through the platform were massive. It was 5,319 messages over the course of a year that the staff had to answer. So what's coming next? Coming next is chatbots. You see what's happening up here? Hello Todd, I'm Felix, your virtual health assistant. You've all seen this when you've gone online to buy something. What's interesting about these are backed by natural language processing, which means that the patient can answer the question however they want, and the system will figure it out. I have a headache, my head hurts, I have pain behind my eye, is all understood as I have a headache, and then it pulls information that is picked up from your materials in your office, It gives the information you want it to give. It's not going to practice medicine, but what you can see in this slide is that when it's applied correctly, it can answer 80% of the questions coming back to a clinic. Again, boy, what could you do with those resources? How can you reallocate those resources to help you run your clinic if you have something like this as managing your incoming questions? But it gets cooler than that, because the chatbot can now be Alexa. Now, it turns out that a HIPAA-compliant version of Alexa is available in 6 healthcare systems in the United States and can contact the physician, schedule appointments, read and interpret lab results, even access and read hospital discharge instructions. It's pretty cool. And what if you start taking some of these technologies and apply them together? So this is what happens if you take a chatbot, link to an avatar, that's listening to the person speaking and analyzing the sentiments so that it knows what to say.
Hi there, Angela.
Get the volume up.
Say hello to the audience here at MobileBeat.
Hi, audience.
None of this is
How are
scripted.
you?
It's making it up as it goes.
Is this the biggest screen you've ever been on?
I think so. Everyone looks like ants from here.
So she's emoting, she's
Don't squash
interacting,
us.
she's answering questions,
Okay, I'll try not to.
she's a little snappy.
What is the
Imagine she had
future of
access to
artificial
your records.
intelligence?
You're talking to her.
Thank you.
Don't mention it.
She's amazing. And if she had access to your medical records, she could answer a ton of questions. Next generation technology, though, already available, is this one.
I can see you and hear you. And what makes me different is that I can respond to your emotions. I guess you could say I'm putting a human face on artificial intelligence.
Wow. So now it's a chatbot that can listen to what you're saying, intuit your emotions, actually look at your face and see you're not happy and answer accordingly. Physical therapy and rehabilitation, currently it's been done in an outpatient setting, but there's a lot of technologies where you can do this virtually, either through videos or more advanced technologies such as avatars, that you can simply click on this particular platform, identify the exercise you want, and both the therapist and the patient are on the same page using the same devices. And what about the future? This is essentially a hologram, a holodeck from Star Trek. This is currently being done in Australia in the outback, which is as a way to reach patients who are too far away from centers to be seen directly. Truly, you can do this today. Next year, maybe I'll come back as a hologram, although I have to give everybody HoloLenses. Exactly. Well, with the virus thing, maybe. So the teaching tools, now you've done all the surgery, you've seen the patient, you've managed them at home, you've done your televisit, and you want to beef up a little bit on your surgical technique. This is a company called OSSO VR. And as I was listening to your talks yesterday about PAOs and how complex it is, I texted the CEO of this company who happens to be a pediatric orthopedic surgeon, and he would love to do this for you guys as a PAO. So you can go practice the PAO prior to doing it as often as you need to get it right. So the pain points, I only went through some of them, are largely solved. You can take these technologies and solve pain points and create income on the back end by either freeing up resources or providing better and more accurate care. Now, building the AI-powered or the digital-powered organization is difficult. It is not a technology problem. It is a culture problem. It requires a lot of leadership, a lot of change management. It's not a matter of dropping a computer into an office and expecting people to use it. So that is why I'm the CTO of our department. I think I'm the only CTO of an orthopedic department or chief innovation officer that I know of, certainly of an academic one, but my chairman doesn't have time to figure this out. So I encourage those of you who are chairmen, who have chairmen who are interested, to go and find somebody in your department who has an interest in this space and maybe try to find if there's an opportunity for you guys to follow. If you're interested in this stuff, I do run a conference specifically dedicated to digital health in orthopedics. We run it before the JP Morgan conference. We've had Richard there several times. It's been great. Next year is January 9th and 10th in San Francisco. I encourage you to take the leap from the analog health to digital health. I thank everybody here for your amazing hospitality. We had a 5G enthusiast last night roaring in the streets. And I'll leave you with one last little clip because we still have to remember it is new technology and we have to take it with a grain of salt.
jazz.
Playing jazz.
Smoothie.
Making smoothie.
Calendar.
No meetings today. Remember, tandläkare at 9:30.
Fire off.
Fire off.
Open door.
Door open.
Så ska vi sätta en till.
Fire. Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open. Open door.
Repeat that.
Open door.
I didn't understand that.
Hey! Open door!
Play on the floor.
Get open door! Open the door! Open the door!
Error.
Hey, William. With a rock? Huh? Open door.
Higher volume.
Fire!